Hey traders, Raghee here, and in this recap video we're actually going to go over the NAS because I've been very interested in where we could ultimately roll over. But I got a really great question in the chat room today on the post close, and it was, Rag, the NAS has been heading higher, from one end of the range to the other. So what are the opportunities to play the pullbacks? And it has been tough because once a market is in chop, even when it looks like such a clean move to the upside, there's got to be a setup. Now, the only setup we could probably say was valid would have been going back here. Let's go back to those previous range lows. So these were already in place. So if you just extend out the range low like that and like this, okay, you end up with a zone. Now this one's rather wide, but this would be an oversold zone. That's really the only longer term setup that sets a bullish strategy in motion. Just buying an oversold market, buying calls in an oversold market, or every day, especially within the context of chop. And once we've entered the zone that would basically take us from about, it's a pretty odd little zone, but here's what we knew at the time: this resistance, and this was support, right? So what you would have then done once we kind of got into this zone in between the red and the green, here's where you retreat to the 30, the 60, even the 120-minute time frames. Here's where you get nimble and short term with the swing buys, buying pullbacks to the wave. So it wasn't as easy on hindsight as it may look, but I think that's a great question. What do you do when you, so by the way, now what? Are we overbought? Yeah, we are. But remembering that you want to respect the trend that was, I do carry with this a bullish bias. And that bullish bias, the bias is that I will keep when the previous trend was pretty darn clear, as this one was, has kept me out of a lot of trouble over the years. So don't get ambitiously short, but I am wondering, with major economic events this week, what do markets like Google, Amazon, Facebook, what do they mean to possibly a rollover in the NAS, or at least getting back down into the range? So take a look at Google. Now, this was a market I walked everybody through in terms of what I call a shockwave setup. Now, why would, on the future side, a trader look at Google? Because it's going to give us insight into how a heavy-weighted name like Google will hit the NAS. And you can see that move in Google to the downside has dragged the Nasdaq down. And I'm not going to be surprised to see a little bit of weakness in the NAS, because as we go into the Asian session, the Nikkei has been pretty heavy as well. So, when you start thinking about the way in which these markets start to interact, and you look at the NAS here on the 5-minute, when you think about the way these markets interact, the way the Nikkei will reflect a lot of the Asian session and the risk aversion. Nikkei, of the 4 indexes that I watch most closely, Dow, SPOOS, Nasdaq, and that Nikkei has been rather weak. So that's where I would think, okay, we'll get a little bit more of a pull on the NAS as we go into this Asian session. All right, so that's the recap here, looking at Google, preparing for Facebook here, and also keeping an eye on Amazon later on this week. Another trade that I want to mention is OIH. And it's uncanny how often I end up recording these videos at pretty much the exact time that TradeStation decides it needs to do whatever it is that it does. Not their fault, definitely mine. I got to look at the clock before I record these things. But in the premium video, I'm going to talk about Amazon, Facebook, how it's affecting our NAS, the zone that we're getting ready to look at on the Nikkei to get long. Also, copper and our current open position in the Aussie versus New Zealand dollar, and how we're going to start to prepare, or at least a watch list for tomorrow's hot zone in the Australian hot zone that we're going to have tomorrow at 9:30. So we at least get the watch list ready about a day out. So I'll talk about all that in the premium video. In the meanwhile, we are still continuing to watch Dow, Nikkei, copper, Aussie dollar, Canadian dollar, and the associated Forex pairs for those currencies as well. All right, gang, I'll see you in the next update.